Welcome to another episode of Anglican Unscripted. This is episode 910. I'm Kevin Kallsen.
I'm George Conger. Today is April 11th, 2025.
Welcome to another show of Anglican Unscripted. We are so happy you could be here. This is our happy place. It's not quite that happy because it's raining out. I'm not in Florida. I haven't seen the sun in a couple days. Whilst George, all you see is sun, but humid season's upon you now, isn't it?
No, it's very dry. Bright sunshine. It's low 60s in the morning, gets up to the high 70s by midday. Mm-hmm. Beautiful. This is the weather that people come to Florida for.
It is. It's great. Well, actually, most of my friends from the Florida Grand have started to sojourn north. They're snowbirds, and they're headed to different places around the country. They're going to start camping with their RVs, and it's a slow process, but none of them will be there the 1st of May. That's when most of them, they want to be out, because once May hits in Florida, you could have a hot 95 degree, 99% humidity today. And nobody likes that, George, except for you guys.
I do.
You do.
I do.
And for our friends overseas, these are Fahrenheit numbers we're throwing around here. Let's see, how was your week? Pull the show notes here.
Very good. Preparing for Easter. My wife and I have been stuffing Easter eggs for the children's little celebrations, and we're going to have a sunrise service this year in addition to the regular route of services. Just a wonderful time of preparation.
Sure.
Finished up my Lenten series. The class this past Tuesday was on charity, Christian charity, which is love. So I'm in a happy, clappy mood, and we had a miracle occur at our healing service. Now maybe I should call Rome and start the process of canonization. St. George of Lecanto. But,
yes.
We had a parishioner come, and we have a small group, dozen people every Wednesday, and we pray. And it's a prayer time followed by Eucharist, and she asked for prayers for her son, who hadn't spoken to her since November. He won't take her phone calls, won't answer the phone, and she's having things happen in her life that she needs to talk to him. And so we prayed. Spent 5-6 minutes specifically praying on this issue. And about an hour after the service, I get a phone call, and she's crying, and I think, oh, God, what'd I do? And she said, "You'll never believe what happened. My son just called out of the blue and said he loved me. He was sorry." And here's the funny thing. We've had a woman that in the part of our group we pray every week for, who has a child with schizophrenia, and never a change. And one woman comes one day, pray for her son, and the Lord touches his heart without any other intervention. God's funny like that.
Yeah, it's a mystery. We always say, well, why aren't my prayers answered? Why aren't my prayers answered? No, this is an interesting prayer to have answered in 2025. My 3 children are communication non gratis right now since November for different challenges in politics and religion and stuff like that. I expect that too shall pass. But to be in the position where we're doing that prodigal son prayer, it's hard, and to see God answering that in people's life is amazing. We just did the prodigal son in our reading 3-4 weeks ago, so 2 weeks ago. So
yeah, I was asked by somebody. I got a contact, would I like to apply for their church to be the rector? And I said no. And they said, well, why don't you want to move? Because basically I'm in that final window. I'm in my early 60s. And I basically either going to stay where I am till I'm done, or get that final big bucks job, if you will. And I said, because I'm happy, because God has given me a place where I feel fully alive and fully fully in line with his purposes for my life. And how could you live a better life than mine, where I see the see the effects of prayers in people's lives. It's just extraordinary.
It is.
How God, when you're in the right spot where God wants you to be, I could be fooling myself.
No, but there's truth to that. I mean, I enjoy my career, this side hustle called Anglican TV, because I get to observe the miracles and the changes in people's lives, and the church reigniting itself and refining itself after coming off tasty little heresies. And as a Christian, I love to see that. Week here, we don't report a lot of good stuff because for my audience, it does not sell. We do have a good story here, though. Let's see. We have WWE. If you're here in America, it's called WWF, Worldwide Federation of Wrestling. Oh, boy. Has made its way to the churches in the UK. And thought we'd talk about this. This is a Shipley church. I wrote a story on Anglican.inc about it after it made the rounds. It started at Reuters. They broke the story. And apparently, in order to attract new parishioners and believers, a church priest in the UK has decided to bring in the WWE. Now, I assure you, Jesse Ventura has resigned and retired. He's no longer the Hulk Hogan. He's retired. He's not going to be there. Andre the Giant died many years ago. I'm not sure who they're going to bring in here. But if you want to see WWE wrestling and hear the gospel at the same time, there's a church now that offers that, George.
I have mixed emotions. I credit the vicar, the rector there, for creative thinking. Mm-hmm. He's in a depressed English town, which probably I think the vast majority are depressed right now.
Yeah, I mean, all
not only economically, but emotionally. England's in a tough spot right now. And this fellow is basically providing something. Mass culture, he's trying to baptize it or Christianize it so that it's not the Iron Sheik versus Andre the Giant, but, it's David and Goliath. And he's using biblical stories in the wrestling, which I think is sort of fun. And for somebody who knows these things and wants morality, you actually can get it from professional wrestling, because the professional wrestling, it is an act. I know it's going to shock some people.
It's not real. It's not real.
It's not real. If you want real wrestling, you can watch the NCAAs and the college championships, but that's it. But this is acting, and with giant men with testosterone supplements.
Yes. Yeah.
But they do moral storylines, and it's always been so, going back to Gorgeous George in the 50s and 60s, to Andre the Giant and the Iron Sheik and Jesse the Body Ventura. All these people, they follow moral storylines. And this rector is trying to hook the latent morality, latent desire for moral certainty that is found in the English working class, and try to reconnect it to the Church of England. So I credit him for that. Would I do it? No. But I'm not him. And his tastes and the tastes of that community are not my cultural tastes. Mm-hmm. Kevin, you had strong views on that.
Well, I'm biased. Okay, I'm biased because I grew up in northern Wisconsin, Minnesota area. All my cousins were in Minneapolis, St. Paul, and so when holidays happened, we would go and spend our holidays with the largest cousin who owned the largest house. And in one situation, it was Lincoln and Jason's house we stayed at, and their after Thanksgiving tradition was to go to a WWF. It was something different back then. I'm talking like when I'm 12, 13, 14 years old. After Thanksgiving dinner, the ladies would clear the dishes and go drink wine. All the men would go to WWF and come back all rowdy after that. And that's what we did on a Thanksgiving evening. And so, yeah, I get it. It's fun. It's entertaining. I just, in my mind, because of my youth and how unreal it is, it's just entertainment. I'm like, is that really the best Christian message going forward? I can see, yeah, maybe, but if if the goal is only to draw people into church, right now, offer a tattoo parlor. You know, that'll get them in church. I don't know. And so, I also think if you're going to try something like this, you have a litmus test. If in 6 months you're growing your church, okay, I'll say, But you and I have complained about helter skelters in churches. You and I have complained about hard rock, Angels Fascists playing a live concert at the cathedral. So, we can't be of two minds of this.
Well, I think there's a distinction. A rock concert that has no Christian content, or an amusement ride, or mini golf, or putt-putt golf, whatever I don't know what they call it in England. Yeah. Miniature golf in the United States. That has no Christian content. But if the stories being told through the professional wrestling, they're akin to the medieval morality plays.
I get that, yeah. Pre-Shakespeare.
Now, So, in other words, if they're trying to teach something, then I'm not a problem. And also, I'm aware that there's a cultural bias. I don't have problems with organ concerts or musical events or sort of highbrow things taking place in church. I have a problem with vulgar, common things, and that's a prejudice. It's not defensible on logical grounds. So I'm a little... I want to hold back from being unpleasant. I just want to say, fella, this is a neat idea, and if it works, good for you. If it doesn't, I take down the mat sooner than later.
Well, you just received the blessing of Saint George of Lucento. That's pretty high, brother.
And we have some first class relics for sale here. Yes. If you would like a reliquary. I have some fingernails. I was going to trim my nails after the show. But,
All right, so let's move on to our second story of the week, and that's going to be Narnia. Big C.S. Lewis fan I am. Read the Narnia books. Read much of his collection. That's sad. His family has sold the rights to Narnia, and it looks like Netflix has picked up the latest realm of his collection, and they're going to remake it. They're going to refilm it into a rewritten story, and because they're going to do that, there's rumors that go with that. They've already picked the producer, director, and she's the one who did the Barbie film. And, okay, I can see a tilt already. But one of the rumors on Twitter or X and in social media is that they're going to have Meryl Streep play Aslan.
Yeah, that's been in some of the trade publications of the gossip side, but there was an editorial, an op-ed piece in the Telegraph in London applauding the choice of Meryl Streep to play Aslan the lion, who is, if you don't know these series of, I think there's 7 in total,
6 or 7
children's books. Aslan is in that world is the Christ-like figure, and they're doing a gender swap. They're swapping Aslan the lion, who in the films made 20 odd years ago, which were very nice, pleasant, a little dull, but the voice of Aslan was Liam Neeson, the actor, really effective. They're now going to make it a woman, Meryl Streep. And perhaps Netflix is basically trying to do some test marketing to see if they're going to have a Snow White fiasco, where they put a fish-eyed, obnoxious girl in the place of sweet little Snow White and see if it destroys the brand. Well, Disney found out the hard way how to lose a few $100 million to be woke and go broke. Maybe Netflix is testing the waters and not confirming it yet. But, I think of in the final battle where Aslan, the wicked, not the final battle, but where the Wicked Witch shears away Aslan's mane. Yeah. Basically, demasculate, removing his masculinity as part of his defeat. We don't have to wait for the witch to do that. Greta Gerwig is going to start off with that, emasculating Aslan. Is it important that there be a male figure representing Aslan, or is this just a new generation, a new age that can be reimagined with new people? Or is this like South Park, where the mantra was put a chick in it and make it gay?
Yeah. Well, we've reached a society and a generation that does not know what a maleness is anymore. Okay, they were told early in school that masculinity in any form is toxic. We don't allow masculinity here because it's toxic, it hurts people, and we allow for empathy and femininity. And if you want to be a empathetic or feminine male, that's fine. But if you display any characteristics where you are toxic, and we will let you know right away if you're toxic, that's not allowed here. Will there be a toxic Aslan in this new Narnia film is the question. And if we're going to let the star of Devil Wears Prada into that role, I would say there'd be some toxic masculinity there. She did a wonderful role there. So I don't know. Let it play out. We can critique it when it gets here, but I would not be surprised if they did it. I would be happy if they didn't. I would love them to stick to the story, but Netflix and Disney have lost the moral ground in writing stories that define human gender. So,
well, the Star Wars franchise and the Indiana Jones franchise were ruined by Disney by being woke. Mm-hmm. The Lord of the Rings series on is it Netflix or Disney Plus or
Lord of the Rings? Who did that? Who's the redoing one? I think is Prime. I think Prime is redoing the Amazon
Prime.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that has turned out to be a fiasco. Mm-hmm. And I don't know what these people are thinking. That it is so now blatantly ideological. Mm-hmm. That Disney is not in the business to make money and entertain. It's in the business to change people's thinking. That's propaganda, and I hope the Narnia books don't go and follow the poor example that Disney and the others have set.
Yeah, I don't know. Wherever there's money to be made, there's a story to be told. All right, let's move on to some more.
Well, if you were going to cast Aslan, if you wanted a masculine figure, how about like Mark Wahlberg or somebody really,
The Rock. Hey, get The Rock to do it. Yeah. All right. Hey, in the comment section, who would you want to play Aslan? Please put that in there. Any current Hollywood star. Don't put Tom Cruise. No. All right, so let's go here to St. James Blackville of the South Carolina Diocese has disaffiliated. They put in a press release that they are in disagreement with the diocese practice of ordaining women, and it's time to find another place to serve. Now they're taking their parish with them. I don't remember if they announced where they're going yet, though.
I'm not sure. I don't know whether they're going to the continuing church or to one of the flying jurisdictions or to the REC, but St. James Blackville's vestry voted to disaffiliate with the Anglican Diocese of South Carolina, and according to the canons and constitution, a parish can do that and take its property with them if it's free and clear. If they owe the money to the diocese, you got to take care of that first. But This isn't the case.
No.
So where this is a small tragedy for the Diocese of South Carolina that it came to this. And I think it was basically by a clarification of their canons on this point. Therefore, before this, they had sort of been in tension. Reality was they had women clergy, but until it was sort of put down into, it's like the situation in the Episcopal Church. Well, the prayer book doesn't say anything about gay marriage, therefore I'm fine. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, as
come
soon
on.
as we change it, we're going to see some grief. Well, I can't have this in my pew that says blah blah blah. I think the deeper picture is that the ACNA has not been able to finesse the women's issue.
Hmm.
It's still there, and it's going to be there until they find a solution that I don't know what it is.
Yeah, I thought REC was the solution. You know, if you really can't serve under a ACNA diocese like South Carolina, which is marginal on women's ordination, or go a little further north to the right, there's one that can't wait to ordain the next woman. In that realm, if your church really has trouble, the REC was what I thought was the safe place. Don't know. So maybe that's just Kevin thinking it was a safe place. Let me know in the comments where. See, all right, let's move overseas again to the UK. We're going to talk a little bit about Liverpool Assistant Bishop of Warrington, Bev Mason. We talked about her now for 6 or 7 months because she has been put on administrative leave, still getting paid, which is good, but she now has a part-time job. Well, this is a convoluted story we need to tell you about because she is a victim of the UK's Church of England safeguarding. Let's talk, George.
John Peramblith was the Bishop of Liverpool. He was a protege of Stephen Cottrell, and went from being a suffragan of Cottrell's and assistant bishop in Diocese of Chelmsford to being Bishop of Liverpool. And the process was fraught with some difficulty. It later came out because he failed or didn't pass the safeguarding tests. And it then subsequently turned out that there were 2 complaints made against him for sexual harassment. And one of the complainers was the woman who became his assistant, Bev Mason. Mm-hmm. When he was Bishop of Liverpool, he sexually harassed the Bishop of Warrington. When she complained, she was put on administrative leave and he was left in office. Well, eventually, when all of this came out into public, he resigned. Now, you would have thought that the Church of England, the victim whom they sidelined for having the audacity to complain about a perpetrator who was a bishop, she'd get her job back. Well, she's being paid, but she was not allowed to do anything. Well, how many months has it been? 2 months, 3 months since Peramblith has been gone? She's still on the shelf, and she went across the border to the Diocese of St. Asaph in the Church of Wales, Gregory Cameron, who gave her an honorary assistant job, unpaid job, to do Episcopal things, because Liverpool still will not use her. So what is the message? What is the moral of this story? That the Church of England, even with all the stuff that is going on about safeguarding and victims and listening, and they will still stick it to anybody who rocks the boat and complains about their boss. Mm-hmm. So it's a shameful thing that's been happening here.
She should be on Channel 4. What's that lady who does all the breaking news?
Kathy Newman.
Yeah. Go there, and in fact, AnglicanTV@gmail.com. Contact me. We'll do a wonderful interview with your time serving under the safeguarding of safeguarding. It's crazy, George. I don't get that. Clearly, they have not fixed the problem. Let's talk about the next problem. Ann Dyer, Bishop Ann Dyer. We've talked about, is it Archbishop Ann Dyer or Bishop Ann Dyer?
No, Bishop of Aberdeen and Orkney.
Yeah.
In the Scottish Episcopal Church.
She was on the BBC radio, and you know what, George? She wants to move forward. We've reported here many times where everywhere she goes, everything she touches, people quit or get fired, or she fires them. And she's was investigated by her diocese, and they said, yeah, she's bad, but we don't have the money to kick her out. And I thought we could cover the story again, but let's go back and give the original history. Why was she made a bishop, George?
Well, she became the first woman bishop in the Scottish Episcopal Church, and she was appointed to that position by the other bishops. They could not elect a bishop at their electoral college in Aberdeen and Orkney, which was the most conservative and the one diocese that was quite firm on no women bishop. So the Scottish Church responded by giving them the first woman bishop to make a point. She had been the principal of a theological college in England, Cranmer Hall, but had left that job under a cloud due to bullying accusations. Well, she goes up to Scotland, takes up the new post, and by 2022, there are a half dozen complaints against her, and she's suspended for bullying. In fact, there was a report by the former moderator of this Church of Scotland, a man named Torrance, who investigated and recommended that she go. She was not someone who should exercise episcopal office. Well, they began the formal process to get rid of her, but in last year, the procurator, chief legal officer of the Scottish Episcopal Church, after spending £500,000, said it would not be in the public interest to continue this, which was shorthand for being, if she's going to fight this, we don't have the money. Mm-hmm. And it's better for us to basically just suck it up for 4 or 5 more years and let her finish out her time till she retires and throw away money in a 2 or 3 or 4 year process.
Well, George, I got good news. She's changed. On this radio interview, she says, I want bygones to be bygones. I didn't do anything wrong, obviously, but I want to move forward and to reconcile. Now, in my book, that's Reconciliation 101, not admitting you did anything wrong.
She wants to reconcile on her term. Her terms. She, as you said, she doesn't believe she's done anything wrong. She believes it's misogyny. That is the driving the forces against her. Even though 4 out of 5 of the other Scottish bishops have asked her to go, including the ones who put her into the job, she won't go. And she was on the BBC Shetland on her first visit to the Shetland Islands in 3 years, part of her diocese, and basically playing the victim. And she doesn't get it. And this, we had a story, last month was it, or maybe February, where one of the women vicars in her diocese resigned without another job to go to because she could not stay in the diocese. She had been tasked to be on the job on the reconciliation team, helping sort of smooth things over for Bishop Dyer to come back in. Bishop Dyer would only do it according to Bishop Dyer's way. And this woman said, I'm gone. I can't be here anymore. For my own mental health, I cannot have this woman as my bishop. I don't think that's misogyny, Kevin. I think that's a personality disorder we're talking about.
No, that's racism.
Oh, racism.
I mean, in 2020,
English, that's right. It's racism.
In 2025, everything is racism. Okay, move on from misogyny. Come on. All right, let's move on to some international news. Myanmar, if you've watched anything on Twitter, X, or YouTube, you saw these horrific images and videos of the Myanmar earthquake, buildings rocking back and forth, rooftop pools full of water splashing out and over the edges and cascading down the skyscrapers. That's just freakish.
And that was several hundred miles. That was in Bangkok, several hundred miles from the epicenter.
Yeah. A couple buildings under construction completely pancake themselves. And there's a lot of problems resulting in the damage now that we have to pick up. And the Church of Myanmar wants help, George.
Yes, Stephen Tan Mintu, who is the primate, released an appeal for support. And there are 2 levels for this story. One, the fact that the earthquake centered in Mandalay has destroyed many churches and impacted the people there. Country's in the middle of a civil war. It's a failed state. The large portions of the country are held by rebel groups who are fighting the military dictatorship, which overthrew the democratically elected government. It's a mess. All of this is taking place, and that's level one. Level two is, this is a wake-up call for GAFCON and the Global South to act.
Mm-hmm.
Stephen Tanmintu has put out an appeal, but he's not done it through the Canterbury route. He's done it through, other primates and asking for assistance. And the Anglican Relief and Development has put out an appeal for their support.
Yeah, I'll bring that up.
Here's the problem. That's not good enough.
Mm-hmm.
That's not good enough. In other words, if you're a primate of a smallish province that is poor and you're asking for help and it gets pushed off on Anglican Relief and Development, instead of having the primates of Rwanda, Uganda, the Anglican Church in North America make their own personalized appeal saying, send money to Anglican Relief and Development, what it's basically saying is that the GAFCON and the Global South are not ready for prime time. They're not ready to exercise international leadership. They're still stuck in a bureaucratic, mindset. Well, this is ARDF's problem. And we support whatever ARDF's doing, but that's not good enough. In other words, we have created, but intentionally or not, a primatial-driven revolt against Canterbury. And that only counts if the primates do something. So if the primates are silent and don't take individual action, I've not seen any. The only appeal I saw from another primate was from the primate of the Episcopal Church of the Philippines, mm-hmm. who last Sunday asked for a dual collection. In other words, your normal collection for the church and a second one to help the people of Myanmar. The Philippines are not part of the Global South or GAFCON. They're fellow travelers, but they're really tied tight into the Episcopal Church and can't afford financially to pull out. If the Philippines can do that, why not Rwanda? Why not Uganda? Why not Nigeria?
Well, but that's just it.
This is a misstep, a political misstep.
It is because
it's not too late. Thanks.
The biggest problem here is there's a void. Canterbury's not there anymore. This is something Canterbury would have addressed. And we need leadership right now through GAFCON and Global South to step and say, this is something Canterbury would have taken care of. They're not able to do it right now for many different reasons. We call on the Anglican Communion to come together and give in hopes to bring benefit to Myanmar. And somebody's got to stand up and do it. Cottrell's not doing it. Cottrell, he's not doing it.
And the thing is, Archbishop Stephen doesn't expect Cottrell to do it because the Canterbury is vacant and Cottrell is basically not well regarded amongst the international leaders.
Very kind, George.
but if, and all it takes, I'm not saying come up with money. I'm saying put your voices into it, put your standing into it, and let the world know that you stand with Archbishop Stephen. This is akin to the Indonesian tsunami and its effects on Ceylon and South India. In the degree of devastation and damage in localized areas, and you saw the whole Canterbury apparatus swing into motion with appeals and visits and all this and that, and that awareness of the need to communicate that at that time I think it was Rowan Williams is absent, in my view, from the leadership of Global South and GAFCON.
And if Global South and GAFCON are saying, well, we just don't have that type of structure, we aren't Canterbury, no, all you have to do is have a voice here. Just raise your voice up, and the structure will appear. Build it, and it will come.
In other words, all it takes is some press releases and statements, and calling a day of global prayer for the people of Mandalay, the epicenter of the earthquake. And you can say, well, gosh, we don't have the money. We're poor ourselves. That's not what's being asked for. as George shared at the beginning of this story, prayers are answered by God. And maybe, well, I'm not an archbishop and I can't tell him what to do.
No,
so.
and we're not here to tell you what to do. We're here to give helpful hints and advice to what could further your cause and add structure to your structures or lack of structures. You and I have been doing this a long time. You longer than I. I've been actively in Anglican journalism. I would say 2006 is when I started Connecticut6.org. Long time ago, George. In that time, we've gone through probably 80% of the archbishops around the world are new or have been replaced by somebody else in that time.
100%. 100%
100% turnaround. And there's going to be more turnaround locally as well. There's going to be a new primate for Canada. They have candidates they just announced. And there's new names for you and I to learn here. I see a couple that we know, a couple that may be good, a couple that may not so be good. And you know what we like to do? We like to talk about possibilities. And characters. Let's talk about the characters who are up for election for the Primate of Canada, which is still a province, George. Those money problems, all the bad news they have, all the chaos that occurs up there, all the times they haven't told us what their budget is and what money they have, all the times they've sued bloggers. But let's talk about Canada.
Oh, well, the bishops, the primate is nominated amongst the bishops of Canada, and he is like the Episcopal presiding bishop. He does not have a diocese, right. Not like Canterbury. And 4 names have come up, and the names are Christopher Harper, Greg Kerr Wilson, David Lehman, and Rusilla Walsh Shaw.
Okay.
Now, of the 4, 2 I know. Greg Kerr Wilson and Rusilla Walsh Shaw. Rusilla is an assistant or suffragan bishop in the Diocese of Toronto. She is of partial First Nation heritage. She is liberal on sort of the mainstream issues, but she is regarded as a faithful Christian by some of the Canadian conservatives I know. She's not on side, but they don't view her as a horrible human being, where there have been some Canadian bishops who are horrible human beings.
Allegedly. They can sue us, George. Allegedly.
Well, I won't talk about the former bishop of New Westminster.
No.
Greg Kerr Wilson is the closest thing to a conservative on that list of which I'm aware. He's from
Calgary.
Kevin, they all run together in my head. Calgary, Saskatoon, Medicine Hat, He's from the Prairie.
Okay.
And I apologize to my Canadian friends. Who knows? Maybe he'll have to become an Episcopal bishop because his province moves to the United States, becomes a state. I don't know. I'm being silly. Greg Kerr Wilson, and then the other 2, Harper and Lehman, I think are from out west. And if they elect Kerr Wilson, he'll be a Sean Rowe type. Sean Rowe has, recently put out an olive branch to the ACNA. We talked about that last week. Mm-hmm. He is trying to keep the ship of the Episcopal Church afloat. And Rowe's opponents are not the George Congers, who are still in the Episcopal Church. They're the bureaucrats and the entrenched special interests of the Episcopal Church. Kerr Wilson would basically be fighting the same battle that Sean Rowe is, of fighting the entrenched lobbies, whether it's the feminist lobby or the gay lobby or this lobby or that lobby. And Shaw would have an easier time of it. I really can't comment on the other 2, apart from saying that they're pleasant enough people. But the question is this little too late? Is Canada... Canada has some good dioceses, strong dioceses. The Arctic is a very faithful diocese. New Brunswick is a good diocese. Some of the Prairie dioceses and in the northern parts of the Prairie. But the difference between the United States and Canada is that, our diocese, Central Florida, doesn't need money from anybody. In fact, we are a cash cow for other people. We send it to places. We don't get a dime. The Arctic can't survive without the rest of Canada supporting them. So is the Canadian situation, and like the Diocese of Yukon, I think has a bishop and a priest. I mean, everybody else is non-stipendiary. Is it too little too late for the Anglican Diocese, Anglican Church in Canada? Is the culture too far along the secular path that they just need to press the reset button? Newfoundland used to be majority Anglican, and now it's majority none and other in the last 40 years.
And that's the big thing, is how far do they have to reset the button? You know, you've come to a point where you're not preaching the gospel in your churches. You're not counter-cultural. You are culture. They, how far do they know what the original message was? Is my, I don't know.
Well, here's the thing. I mean, if you ask me, I know Greg Kerr Wilson and Priscilla Shaw would know what the original message is.
Okay.
Their problem, in my opinion, and it's merely an opinion, is that they don't know how to get from A to B. They don't know how to bring into fruition the good news that they've been taught about Jesus Christ into a structure that propagates this faith. So is the Canadian Church looking for a caretaker or an administrator to wind down operations, a liquidator, or are they looking for someone to set the church on fire for Jesus Christ?
Yeah. I can't even talk right now. Do this analogous to the Episcopal Church. The Episcopal Church, Sean Rowe's job now is to lift the Titanic from the bottom of the sea. Okay, it hit the iceberg. Some people jumped in lifeboats. It sank. Can Sean Rowe gather a team to lift it off the bottom of the ocean and bring it back to its former glory? We are there with the Canadian Church as well. Are there characters here in these primatial candidates who could lift the Canadian Titanic off the bottom of the sea, George? I don't know. Good questions. That's what we ask here, George. Just the good questions. Is it raining harder? See, it may be raining really hard right now. I can see it outside that it is, but I can't hear it because I got my noise cancellation. I bet the audience can hear it. Just listen. Do you hear the rain? A little bit?
Pitter-patter of little feet, Kevin.
Okay, good. Sorry if it's bothering you guys out there, but that's what you get when you follow a show where a guy lives in a bus. Let's move on and talk about NDAs, non-disclosure agreements. Now, truth be told, I used to go to a church long time ago where a young girl was injured in the cafeteria of the church. She actually had an accident where a table came together and removed part of her finger. I'm not sure which, I don't remember which one it was. The family got that all fixed, and the church did everything it was supposed to do. Family did everything it was supposed to do, but the insurance got involved. And the insurance says, we're going to give you a lot of money. Okay, I'm going to help you out here, but in order to do that, you're going to have to sign an NDA. Okay, a non-disclosure agreement, because we don't want any of this to come back and haunt us. And the family says, well, how much money are you talking here? Well, I'm talking about this much money. Okay, well, all right, good. And so the NDA was signed, and everybody was happy, and that never came back to bite the church. NDAs serve a purpose, not in the Christian realm, but certainly in the insurance realm of protecting future assets. Let's say it that way. NDAs can be very bad and wicked, though, as well, George. And Texas is trying to deal with the wicked side. And let's talk about a story that happened in Texas that led to the new laws, and talk about its realm within Christendom.
The Texas legislature, the lower house, passed Trey's Law on April 8th. Mm-hmm. Trey's Law, and was backed by a coalition of churches, including, and Trey Garlick Trey Carlock, as a young man, attended a summer camp for 10 years called Kanakuk Camps. He was a Texas native, but the camps were from Missouri, and they were organized out of Texas. And while he was in these camps, he was molested by a camp employee. Eventually, it came out, and a settlement agreement was reached where he was paid compensation, but the insurance company required a non-disclosure agreement that was written such that Carlock felt that he couldn't even tell the therapist about this, and he wound up committing suicide over this, that he had to be silent about the abuse he received. The bill before the Texas legislature essentially outlaws non-disclosure agreements that can be used against a victim, against their will, so that what it says is that it prevents churches and other institutions from requiring survivors to sign non-disclosure agreements and settlement agreements regarding sexual abuse. So that if you were sexually abused under Texas law and a settlement was reached, the law, the way it's written under the new law, is that if you don't want your name to go out there, doesn't have to. But if you want to tell your story, you can, and you can name you can name the perpetrator. So money cannot buy silence against your will. Now, the Bishop of Fort Worth, Ryan Reed, he said that he didn't speak for the ACNA, but personally, I support any state legislation that protects victims and might prevent future abuse. Reed's point was that sunshine is the best disinfectant, and covering up abuse by paying off the victims and make it go away is not the moral or ethical thing to do, is Reed's point. And it's also a point shared by the Catholic bishops of Texas and other church leaders.
Oh, hold on here. I follow the Church of England very closely. I think they do. What do you mean it's not what you do?
Well, this has been a big problem in the Church of England, where their insurance companies, that's who's being blamed, but the insurance company is sort of owned by the church, so I don't know how true this is, are basically requiring non-disclosure agreements when people get fired, or when people, basically the Church of England's practices has been to command silence from people. And what was in the testimony and the hearings before the Texas legislature was that this silence does not allow healing. It actually makes things worse, because the perpetrators essentially can get away with paying off their victims, and if they're powerful enough, they go on to victimize again and again and again. This is one of the things that is percolating through Congress, that we have some congressmen who have been serial abusers of staffers, and every time they get sued, the Congress pays them off, and it's kept secret. Now, Justin Welby was famous for saying we won't have non-disclosure agreements in the Church of England. That was pointed out. Well, we're still doing it.
Yeah.
One of the things the old Bishop of Winchester did, Bishop Tim, whatever it was, he was a real piece of work. And every person he destroyed, he'd sign an NDA agreement where they couldn't say why they were being destroyed. The law at times, the insurance companies, when they're the moral arbiters of the church, we're in big trouble. Because the insurance company's job, rightly so, is to minimize exposure and loss. But there have to be grown-ups in the room, people of character who run the show, to say, sometimes the church needs to take a smack, and sometimes somebody of importance needs to be embarrassed. Mm-hmm. This is what they did. I don't know if there are any NDAs with the John Smythe thing, but it's the same motives behind Welby covering up the Smythe stuff, to protect the institution at the expense of the victim, and in defiance of God's truth.
Yeah. I can see the purpose in a kitchen accident. Okay, all right, you don't want it splashed all over the newspapers that somebody lost a finger in the kitchen. I got that, but at a certain point, you say, you can't use an NDA to cover up a crime. And the NDAs in the cases in Texas and in the UK were used to cover up crimes, and that's where you have to stop. In my humble, non-professional, non-legal opinion. George, let's move on. We've got one last story. It's not a good story. We've covered it.
Two stories.
What? I have
one on the list and one that you have.
Yeah, we're going to cover that one. Oh, we'll see what we got time for. All right, let's do the Chinese Protestant Church. Pledges to back the CCP. Well, there's a surprise, George. They have a party line, and anybody who's not paid any attention to the 401ks, the stock market, X, Twitter, mass media, probably doesn't know that there's a tariff war going on out there, and it's crazy. I say that because I have lots of investments. But other than that, in this tariff war, Trump has decided that he wants to have a level playing field between the United States, a consumer in the highest regard of foreign products. If you trade with us, we want to be sure that we have reciprocal trade agreements with you. The ultimate goal is to have zero tariffs, free trade, free trade. I used an example tariff last week about Canada. I was wrong about that. I mentioned that in the comments. Go to the comments if I'm wrong about anything this week, please do. But tariff is a big topic because Americans over the last, since 76, have enjoyed cheaper products that can be made here in America. I know. I'm on a Mac computer, which was made in China, on my iPhone, made in China, on my Rode microphone, made in Mexico, drinking out of my coffee cup, made in China. And we like inexpensive products, and we're willing to ship them here to prove our point. So we pissed off the Chinese, George, to make a long story short. And the CCP is, if one thing, arrogant, prideful, and it's their way or the highway, and this will be an interesting trade war. We know how hard the Chinese can be because we have missions in there to promote the gospel. We have underground churches, we have societies that we support, we have underground ministers in programs. We smuggle Bibles. We still have to smuggle Bibles into China. And so here we are trying to, in 2025, make the gospel real in China. And the Chinese Protestant Church, who should be on side with the gospel, is on side with the Chinese party. There's a lot behind the story, George.
Several stories out of China on this point.
Yeah.
It's a little aside. China is one of the largest printers of English language Bibles, but you can't get a Chinese Bible in China. That's
funny. It's crazy.
On May 1st, a law comes into effect that bans all foreign mission activity in China. And this means that no more mission trips, no more Bible outreaches, no more exchanges in China for foreigners. If a foreigner is invited to China in a religious connection, let's say our presiding bishop goes and visits his counterpart, the Free Self-Patriotic Movement, China Christian Council in Shanghai. If he's going to give a sermon, if he's going to give a speech, that speech must be given to the police first to check, to see if it comports with Chinese state law.
Hold on. If presiding Bishop Sean Rowe goes to China, he has to hand his sermon in and say it has to be approved? He's golden. Okay. I think he's safe.
So that, some mission groups right now, basically missionaries in China, if they get caught, are under visa violations because you're supposed to be there as tourists or English teachers or whatnot. And if they're proselytizing, they're violating their mission visa. Now, if they're caught, they're violating a criminal law for that would be akin to being a propagandist for a foreign power. So the Chinese are cracking down. Second, the state-controlled church has been told that it must, in its policies, comport with Communist Party doctrine and support the foreign policy of the CCP. So that, I always joke about the Episcopal Church putting out repeating Democratic Party talking points during general conventions. And nobody really thinks much of it because they're just a bunch of goofballs at the General Convention who nobody pays any attention to. Well, the Three Self-Patriotic movement is now going to be putting out opinion pieces and editorial comments that are written by the Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So that, for instance, one of the Bibles, the Chinese Party is rewriting the Bible. The Communist Party is rewriting the Bible. For instance, the story of the woman caught in adultery. Jesus, says, "Go, if those who are without sin, you can cast the first stone." Then he says, "The adulteress, go and sin no more." That's been changed to Jesus approving of her stoning because it's part of the law, and Jesus is faithful to the law because that's what a good Chinese communist is. He's faithful to the law, whatever the law says. Yeah. So the Chinese Communist Party is trying to destroy Christianity as a independent force and as a moral agency. And so it's the house church movement is now being pushed even farther underground because they can't get Bibles, they can't get foreign help. They can't talk to people. No, I'm not talking about Hong Kong. Hong Kong is still a little different, but I wouldn't hold out hopes for the long-term survival of Hong Kong as a free and independent society.
No, we have viewers from Hong Kong, and they tell us all the time, in Taiwan, how difficult it is. So we just, this is another case to hand it over to God for prayer. Mm-hmm. There's a mistaken, I believe it's mistaken belief in America that China is some sort of this colossus where the trains run on time, they have all this modern technology and whiz bang stuff. But China, we don't really hear in the Western press, has got a terrible problem with unemployment of young people graduated from colleges who fighting for jobs as waitresses and waiters. It's the Chinese economy under this will be destroyed in this tariff war, and I think my personal opinion is that this is one of the things Donald Trump wants to do. He wants to reset the whole table. He wants to basically take it out of the pockets of the money people and put it into the pockets of the American middle class and stick it to China. Ronald Reagan was able to bring down the Iron Curtain. I don't know if Trump has the ability to take down China because there's a lot there that has to be taken care of. It's amazing. It's such a huge country. Well, it's a huge country as far as the vastness of its geography, but they really stamp down on the ability of their people to have any freedoms.
See, there's no social security net in China. No. I mean, there's no, that's, they reversed the one-child policy, and now their little posters. Now, I don't speak Chinese, and so I take this from people who do, so I'm not a first-hand witness, but have more than one child to take care of yourself in your old age, because the state's not going to do it. Yeah.
I don't know.
So, well, we take it back. This is another thing that we need to pray about. We need to pray for the Christians of China, for the people of China.
Yeah.
That, if you've been to China, it is so badly polluted. I mean, the air is awful. You get the food, water you can't drink.
Your throat is always sore because you're breathing the pollution. There's always a haze in the air. Yeah, you're right. It's horrid. Now, I was with a priest recently who was querying, when was the golden age of the church? Was there ever a golden age of the church? And I gave my best answer possible, George. I said the golden age of the church was the first century under persecution. That's when we grew the furthest, the fastest. And, it's sad to say, it's horrid to say that the golden age of a church is persecution. But may this be the golden age of Christianity in China, when they're under persecution and they grow, and hopefully one day retake leadership in government, that there would be another revolution, that the ideas of Mao and others would be plowed under, so to speak. All right, George, we're past an hour. We'll have to talk about the next story next week. It's a story that can wait. I'm Kevin Kallsen.
And I'm George Conger, and you've been watching episode 910 of Anglican Unscripted.